I'm Paul Suffy, CEO of REDBOOKS, and on behalf of the entire REDBOOKS and thought leadership teams here, I'd like to thank you for joining us and introduce our friend, Aaron Ross. Aaron created what we like to think of, and I think is coined, a revolutionary cold calling 2.0 inside sales process at Salesforce.com, directly contributing to $100 million of sales value and has now led to over $1 billion in incremental sales. He consults with select companies and divisions, and for his clients has doubled and tripled sales growth, and we've seen some real examples of that, and I think he's going to share a couple today. And most importantly, to us at least, Aaron's strategies have personally impacted our sales processes here at REDBOOKS, so we've seen firsthand the power of his teachings, and that's why we wanted him to share them with you directly. His first book, Predictable Revenue, is the one that made him world-renowned best-selling author, literally recognized the world over in sales and biz dev. Predictable Revenue is now hailed as the sales Bible of Silicon Valley, and here in New York, we'd like to say of Silicon Alley too. A bit on the personal side of Aaron, he's a graduate of Stanford, lives with his wife and 4 children in LA, has a 5th baby on the way any day now. His wife is literally due in a week, and they're also in the process of adopting 2 or 3 more, which means that Aaron needs to be hyper efficient, and he is. He keeps his work week to 25 hours a week, which still seems amazing to me. On the family side, family is really everything to Aaron. As I said, he works 25 hours a week. He's even started taking his older kids on speaking trips. So this is a photo here of his 10-year-old daughter helping Aaron keynote the Sales Hacker Conference. Really getting him started early. That's awesome. And lastly, on the introductory side, Aaron has a new book co-authored with Jason Lemkin, who co-founded EchoSign, recently acquired by Adobe. And this book, fortunately for all of us, is being released in initial installments as a free ebook. Installment 1's already out. I highly recommend it, that you check it out. It's called The Predictable Revenue Guide to Tripling Your Sales. And if you just go to that URL right up there on the screen, it's there. Get it now, and the rest of the installments, I'm sure Aaron will be addressing coming up at the end of the presentation. And now, without further ado, Aaron Ross, take it away, man.
All right, Paul. Well, thanks very much, and I'm happy to be here. Talk to everyone. It sounds like West Coast, East Coast, and was it maybe one person from the UK? I imagine it's going to be pretty late back there by now. But now, some of you, I'm sure, have read Predictable Revenue. Some of you haven't. I think the gist of it is this is the sketch from the cover of the original book. I think what I'm trying to do is help. I've seen these patterns around companies and people who start in this section A, the yellow part. You start something and you have, like, it's never easy starting a company, but getting your first customers is, I'm going to put, relatively easy because you're working through friends, family, investors, word of mouth, and you get your first 10 or 20 customers or your first $1 million to $10 million in revenue, and something happens that you decide that you want to grow the company faster. Like, I get a bigger mortgage, I get investors, something happens, and we got to grow, and you start spending money or time trying to reach out to outbound marketing, outbound sales, to companies who have never heard of you, partners, whatever it is, and you realize, wow, all the stuff we've done to get started, to get through this A area, to get to our first $1 million or $10 million, none of that is helping us get to the next level, get through these hot coals where some things are working, most of it's not, and get through there to that right side, the green, where you have some sort of predictable way to grow, which includes having a way to reach out to people who've never heard of you and get them interested and get them to understand how you can help. It's a whole different skill set to grow proactively or grow in an engineered way versus when you're growing organically at the beginning. And I found this applies whether you're an entrepreneur starting a company or oftentimes if you're just starting a new job. A little easier at the beginning, and then as you keep trying to take it to the next level, you hit new problems. Anyway, I'm trying to help you get through these hot coals as fast as you can, and I'll share some of these key ideas today. So that the idea is whether you are, say a sales executive or salesperson or entrepreneur, you want more peace of mind. You want to grow faster and have more peace of mind. So whether you're stay at home and you don't want to have to worry about this quarter's results, or whether you want to go on vacation and actually be able to be on vacation, I think the essence is having more peace of mind while growing faster. predictable growth. And what I've seen with these ideas, again, I'm going to mix some from the first book and the next one. But I have seen, a lot of companies just have been able to blow out their sales goals and do it repeatedly. The essence is if you can create a predictable sales machine, it takes all the guesswork out of it, at least most of it, because you're not scrambling quarter to quarter. And again, one of the things that's important to growth is being able to develop great sales talent. And I think that's really the essence of what makes companies great, talent. So without, let me give you a specific example. There's a company called Acquia, where it went from, they were about a $45 million company, and they're going to add an extra $30 million in revenue with these ideas. And they were just named the #1 fastest growing company and software company in the United States last year. Another company, not going to say their name, Responsus, was a $20 million company not growing when they started with these ideas. And they actually, within 5 years, putting in the framework, grew 10 times to $200 million in revenue, and were sold to Oracle for $1.5 billion. And the third company, I can't say that, same thing, they were under $1 million. And within $3 million, they went from $1 million to $20 million in revenue in 3 years. Actually, in this case, most of it driven by Outbound. But the point is, with some of these ideas, what I'm interested in is, okay, look, there's a ton of nice, maybe useful sales advice out there, marketing advice, growth advice. Stuff that'll give you a 1% or 10% increase. But what are, because we can't multitask as humans or companies very well, what are a few key ideas that make a really, really big difference? Instead of a 30% increase, what would give me a 300% increase? So I'm going to share 5 of these ideas with you today in the form of fatal mistakes. So the first one, and this is actually one from the next book, but I think this is probably the most important idea from the next book, is that your sales team churn should be, the fatal mistake is having high sales team churn. And I would say more than 10% per year. So this is a more of a conceptual idea, but if you're scaling a sales team, and you want these Lego blocks to help you can make it easy to scale it, companies tend to blame their salespeople for their failures. Salespeople aren't making quota. If they're not making quota, they're not hit their numbers. Okay, fire them, move on. Let's hire 10 salespeople. 5 are going to fail. 5 will succeed. But if you really want to build a sales team that scales and is working, take more responsibility for the systems that your company is creating. Now, I'm sure we have salespeople on the line. We maybe have some executives. If you're a salesperson, of course you got to do your best. But a lot of your success depends on the company, the products, the territories, the comp plan, the sales tools, the messaging, everything else. If you're an sales executive, okay, yeah, you do ultimately, if you're losing 30%, because I think the industry average sales team churn, there's a lot of syllables there. Industry average sales team churn is around 27%, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, which means if you have 100 salespeople, after a year you've lost 27, and you need to rehire 27 just to stay even. And that's crazy. If you had an engineering team or a customer base and you lost 27% a year, that would be like a red level emergency at the board level. For some reason, it's just accepted in sales, and I think that's a big problem because, again, we blame the salespeople too much, and we don't take enough accountability, responsibility on the systems they're in. How are we doing in generating leads for them? Are we training them? Are we hiring the right people? Right, so again, this is more of an idea to help frame the rest of them, but your sales team churn should be under 10% a year, whether voluntary or involuntary. And if you have a fast-growing company, if you're doing well, you probably should have 0% voluntary churn, which means no one in sales should be voluntarily leaving. And actually, I'm curious, Paul, if that resonates with you. I think this is sort of like the newest idea that may or may not, people may not get it yet because we're so used to firing so many salespeople so quickly.
Yeah, no, it definitely resonates with us, and there are actually a couple of questions already from the audience. One is when you say focus on the system, less so than the people, what pieces of the system? should we be focusing on?
Yeah. Well, and I'll go. There's actually two reasons that are the most common for why you might have a systemic issue. Because honestly, if you're losing too many salespeople, it could be the hiring, it could be the comp, it could be quotas, it could be this, that. There's a million reasons why it could be. It's really up to you as a company to dig into it. But the two most common reasons are you're not giving enough leads of the right kind to your salespeople, right? Or in other words, you're making salespeople do all their own prospecting. And the second reason is you're not specializing your salespeople. But we'll go in. Those are actually here in the presentation. We'll go into what those mean. But those are the two. That's probably 80% of what I see as the reasons why sales teams are struggling.
Great. And there's one quick question that might be specifically relevant to the team churn. Are there certain areas or backgrounds of individuals to recruit from that would lead to lower churn? So I guess the question is more the personality of the individual, the experience that the individual has had if they're coming from outside the sales industry that might be better to recruit than others.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a quick answer, and then we can talk about it more at the end. The quick answer is I think you should hire business people who could sell or train rather than salespeople. There's a difference between people. I think a lot of salespeople sell stuff whether the company needs it or not, the customer. And what you really want are I would call them business people who can sell and help the customer become more successful with your stuff. In fact, I just put up a blog post at predictablerevenue.com about that. But I think why don't we save that for the end to go into more detail around salespeople. But it's not so much the people you hire. It is really much more the company, which your company systems, which includes how you hire, of course, but more about how you train, how your sales teams are set up, specialized, how you do lead generation. That's a huge one. And expectations and other things. But let's keep going because some of that I will cover here. So if you're at a company, and I think this is probably more related to earlier stage companies, but it can also be related to you as a person. But if you're struggling, struggling to grow, the first place that I look at is, are you afraid to pick a niche? And there's this term, pick a niche, get rich, which is the idea that by narrowing, a lot of companies and people are afraid of missing out. And so by trying to target too many kinds of customers or markets that you sort of serve, trying to serve everyone, you're not really good at anything. So I went through this myself leaving Salesforce. I worked at Salesforce in the mid-2000s. And when I left, I was like, well, I've done so much sales. I don't really want to do sales anymore. I'm tired of it. It's sort of boring. I want to do something bigger, because I've been a CEO of a company. I want to do that again. I don't know, sales. My specialty at Salesforce.com was prospecting. That was my niche there. But, prospecting is still not that sexy. It feels limiting because I really, I want to conquer the world or whatever. So again, I've seen this with company after company and person after person going through it. And the problem is, again, when you're banging around and things aren't really connecting with people, and this could be a job search, it could be a company trying to find the right target market. It could be a big company starting who's only grown organically through inbound, and you're trying to do outbound prospecting, but it's not quite clicking. You're banging around, and this is the best example. I think it's easier to see someone else's struggle. But when you're speaking to everyone, how no one can hear you. And I'll read this out loud because it's just, listening is even the best. But Acme provides professional consulting services to develop and support online business solutions. From startup to Fortune 500 companies, Acme assists clients to maximize their return on investment in the cloud by providing implementation, development, and value-added software solutions. Now, this was a real description. Okay, now does anyone understand what this means? And if you're like me, you could probably figure it out if you sat there and worked at it. But essentially, for most of you, if someone else comes to your website, it's probably a little bit of the same feeling. In other words, we have too much clutter because we want, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, we can do that for you. we don't want to miss out. We don't want these prospects to miss out. It could be on our website. It could be actually when we're cold emailing people. But to a customer, it's just, I don't know, it's like it's confusing. But when you take away the clutter and focus and narrow your niche, it can become a lot easier to see how you can help me. So actually, a company that went through this problem, there's a company called Lead Genius. And when they started out, they did something called crowdsourcing. And they were, and don't ask, if you don't understand what it is exactly, that's the point. No one understands really what that means. And they were losing, tens of thousands of dollars a month because their niche was just so undefined. And they had maybe 4 months of cash left before they went out of business. And we talked, and they ended up focusing, narrowed down. And one part of crowdsourcing is they were doing virtual assistants for people. And that was actually working well. So by focusing just on that a little bit narrower, they went to cash flow neutral within 60 days, cut some expenses, but really it was more they just, they said, hey, this little thing is working, and they grew it. And they narrowed even further to do outsourced prospecting, so like a subset of what they were originally doing. And it just was really easy to understand. It clicked with people, and they started taking off. And now they have the problem of fulfilling demand rather than the problem of people, people don't want what we've got. And really what they went from was they were very confusing, because when you're trying to go very broad, it can be very confusing. And by just simplifying it, making it simple for people to see what they did, how they can help, people got it and they wanted it. So for you, again, this can actually be for your company or for you as an individual, because I think it's more common now for people to say, well, I could sell this, I could sell that, I could market, I could this. Well, for people who want to hire you or promote you, simplify it for them, like narrow your niche. But anyway, what are you or could you be the king or queen of, like the best in the world at? Don't be afraid to think too small. And one of the places to start is, who have been your ideal customer or customers? Like, where have you had the best result? And get specific. If you do web design, maybe it's the landing page that you just crushed for somebody, or a landing page button. And I think it's these small clues that we overlook because they're just small. This one email you sent out that got this incredible response rate, or this one kind of phone call, or this one kind of landing page. Right? So small clues. And it's sort of, I can't remember the term, but trying to thread the needle, like by being able to get really narrow and go through the eye of the needle, you can get really big. All right, fatal mistake, let's do number 3, growing revenue by hiring salespeople. In other words, it's trying to say, all right, well, we do $5 million this year, we have 10 salespeople. If we want to double our revenue, we should just double our salespeople. And the reality is that it's not the number of salespeople who drive revenue. And they are related to revenue, but it's not the main driver. Lead generation is your big lever to drive growth. Because even with a perfect sales process or a big sales team, if lead generation is crummy for you, you're going to struggle. But if you have great leads, you can get pretty much everything else wrong and still do well. And I like to say there are 3 types of leads because I found it's important to understand that a lead is not a lead is not a lead. So I call them, I guess the point is too, these 3 types, you want to know the pros and cons of each so you know how to use them in your business. Now, this is Pari. She's a little older now, but she has these 3 vehicles. And they're all great, but they're just different. And you just need to know how to use them. Right? She's got the pink scooter for tooling around by herself in the kitchen. And she's got a red car to use with her older brother, play together outside. And then there's, the Ferrari, which isn't hers, but it was a fun picture. And again, they're all great vehicles, but just for different reasons. And likewise with leads, we have seeds, nets, and spears. They're all great, just different. Seeds are word of mouth. This is how you start off and grow up an initial company, to the first million or 10 million. Nets would be marketing or inbound marketing. You're casting a wide net. It's like one-to-many lead generation. Seeds would be many-to-many, because you're trying to get people to talk to people. And then Spears is outbound prospecting, one-to-one. There's a human, I'm a salesperson, reaching out to one prospect. And I think it's important to understand these because things like their funnels are all different. Conversion rates, sales cycles, close rates, deal sizes. The way you generate them is different. The way you respond to them can be different. And what I found is most companies they have this idea at the board, which is, oh, we did 10,000 leads last year. To double, we need 20,000 leads this year. And it's not true, because if you have been growing mostly through word of mouth, really high conversion rates, really fast sales cycles, it's going to be a very unpleasant surprise when you realize that to double, and we need to do a lot more marketing and prospecting, we might need 5 times as many leads next year to double, because the close rates of anything else, marketing or outbound leads, are going to be a lot lower than all these word of mouth we've been getting. So it's about helping you be smart. Again, if you're going to build a house, you need a hammer, a chisel, and a saw, but you need to know when to use them in the right situations. I'll give you one more example before we go into each one. For software companies, well, for every company, your foundation is the C's, word of mouth, happy customers. So the best way to grow this is through customer success. And then if you're a software company, oftentimes the best way to grow at that point is through prospecting. But if you're a professional services company, it's probably through marketing, content marketing. But let's go into each one. So C, let's start with the first one. This is really, I got this idea of a funnel, of a Hourglass from a company called Gainsight. But think about, instead of, hey, we're generating leads and we're closing business, it's that, okay, we're bringing leads in, lead gen, we're generating sales, but then by making our customers successful, we're going to get a lot more revenue, because today especially we have this world of frictionless karma. Happy customers beget happy customers, and unhappy customers means that reduce our new customers. So really looking at making our customers happy as a form of lead generation, as a form of revenue growth, and not ignoring it, because I think traditionally, if you're trying to grow a company, okay, put it all into marketing, put it all into sales. What I'm saying is now you should put at least as much into this idea of customer success, which is how are we making our customers who sign up successful, so that we get better testimonials, more word of mouth, and more upsells, cross-sells, and renewals. It's treating customer success, or this post-sales approach, as important as marketing and selling. So, I think a future executive team can have a head of marketing, a head of sales, and a head of customer success, and they're all sort of equal, I guess you call it, status of respect. Where today, customer success is still like the stepchild, unfortunately. And nowadays, there's companies, again, like Gainsight, that are putting more sales type process around customer success. Here's an example dashboard where, again, the idea is if you know the common reasons why customers leave you, or why they stay, and why they might want to buy more from you, you can start to become more proactive about it and reach out to them before they leave, or reach out to them when you know they should be ready to buy more. So last word on customer success, and customer success is the bulk of the part 1 of my new book. But thinking about customer success is like proactive customer support. It's not glorified support, it's not free help, but your customer support is fixing problems that have already happened. And customer success is trying to make sure that problems don't happen in the first place for your customers. So they're complementary, but I think it's the next big thing, customer success. All right, let's move on. So the second type of leads are nets, marketing. Commonly, we talk about inbound marketing now, content marketing, creating marketing that customers love. So again, the marketing funnel is different than word of mouth or customer success. This is more of a classic marketing funnel. You're driving people to your website or to a webinar. They register as leads, and you follow up, and at some point you convert some to sales cycles and customers, right? In fact, Paul mentioned I'm still doing installments on the new book, and the marketing section is the one I'm working on now, and it should be out in, I hope, next week, 1 or 2 weeks. And so the third type is spears, outbound prospecting. Again, a different kind of funnel, because you have prospectors who are reaching out through email, calls. So the orange part is, who's your ideal customer, build a database. The green part is you're sending like 1,000, like one prospector might send 1,000 emails a month and get 100 responses and have 100 quick conversations, 15 to 15 appointments, and some of those turn into opportunities and deals. Again, there's a funnel. It's just different than marketing. Different expectations, different ROI. Also, outbound tends to work better with medium and larger companies. Inbound tends to work better with small and medium companies. So again, this is about knowing the pros and cons of each type of lead gen. I'm a big fan of outbound because that's one of my specialties. That's what I did at Salesforce. And what happens is when you do outbound, when you have this kind of funnel, it can create a very predictable source of leads. And if you can create predictable leads, then you can create predictable revenue, which is what we want. And that's what Acquia did. For example, Acquia, so they took this idea. This is the company named the #1 fastest growing software company last year by Deloitte & Touche. And here's the gist. You can Google also predictable revenue Acquia, and there's a case study online. But they hired 3 prospectors, and each prospector ended up doing like 500 to 1,000 emails a month, so outbound cold emails. So they're, again, reaching out to companies who've never heard of them, doing about 100 call conversations a month, quick conversations, setting up 20 appointments for their salespeople, closers, and ultimately generating, so one prospector, full-time prospector at Acquia is expected to generate like 15 sales qualified leads per month. And each of those has an average deal size of about $50,000 in annual recurring revenue, or ACV. Now when you get this, that's why it took them maybe 6 months to get this kind of data down, to start, or the gist of it, and to know that, okay, if we have one prospector and they're doing 15 sales qualified leads at $50,000 ARR per month, they're generating about one prospector should do about $750,000 in pipeline per month. And when they saw that it was working and they wanted to grow it, they're like, well, why don't we we're going to grow this team from 3 prospectors to 40. And they're expecting that team to add almost $30 million in extra revenue, I think, by next year. I think the team that was 3 people that started, and I think they're up to around 30 as they're building the team out. It's going to take them a couple of years to hire that many people and train it, but expect about an extra $30 million next year because it was predictable. And I think that's the power of whether it's outbound and getting a system in place. And the other benefit is that when you have predictable lead generation, they have a very high success rate for their closers. They can say, if we want to grow, we need how many leads, how many prospectors, how many closers, and so on. So it is really more of a system. So actually, I'll check in with Paul, because this is something that I think from especially the first book, people really associate it with outbound prospecting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I had spoken about it, and it's something that we've taken to heart here at RedBooks, and it's become an integral part of what we do. And we know others who've gone through your program in terms of just having read the book and spoken with you that feel the same way. There's a quick question that was related to something that you were talking about just before on the spears and nets and
sure.
Feeds. Somebody was asking more about the nets, and it seems more that they want to kind of protect technology. If you were to have or they were to have groundbreaking, revolutionary technology and wish to stay below the radar, should you avoid nets at the beginning? And if so, where should you focus your resources?
Well, it's a good question, because it's a bit of the seeds, nets, and spears are all important. You have to start with happy customers, the seeds. And then whether you do put more energy on prospecting or put more energy on marketing, because you want to focus. probably want to put most of your energy on one or the other and get it working to some point before you go back to the other one. Part of that depends on the kind of business you're doing, also, and the passion and interest of the people there. So if you're doing it groundbreaking technology, and it's a bit longer conversation, but I say is you also, prospecting doesn't make financial sense unless you can close deals. You have a type of customer that's probably worth at least $10,000 or $20,000 in lifetime value. You know, if it's $100 customers, it's not going to be profitable. So let's assume you can do bigger customers. Oftentimes, again, it's for you as a founder or that team. You know, do you have a passion for content marketing? I would start with where your passion is, or you might have a passion for outbound, because either one can take a lot of energy to get working. So you want to make sure you're doing it because you really want to, and you see how it can work, rather than, you know, oh, I should do this on my checklist. But I think companies have been successful both ways. It's not necessarily one or the other. It's, I think, where, again, a lot of it comes down to where you're, as a team, you just feel like the right place to go is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And you want both. It's just a question of where do you start. So they're very complementary. If you start with marketing, that helps you with your, I generally think that if you start with prospecting, it helps. I like to, because you get a much more direct feedback from the market on whether your message is working or not, and whether you're targeting the wrong people or not. Because it's easy to come up with a lot of marketing that is untargeted and in jargony. And as we're actually going to get to the next section, when you're prospecting, you can't be jargony because it won't work. And so it's a good forcing function to make you, to force you to be really clear with who you're going after, why they should use you and your messaging. Well, let's actually talk about that, because the next one is, the fourth fatal mistake is creating a leading next-generation scalable social platform, crowd-funded glazed eye jargonation. And you might laugh at that, but I swear this is what a lot of people's websites or introductions sound like. I love this Far Side cartoon. You know, it's what we say to dogs. Okay, Ginger, I've had it. You stay out of the garbage, Ginger. Understand, Ginger? Stay out or else. And of course, what Ginger hears is blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger. And again, this is mostly, I mean, I guarantee for most of your customers, they come to your website or they ask you what you do, and they hear a lot of blah, blah. Now, my daughter, Aurora, is unfortunately learning techniques around this, but for example, she comes to me, this is really about learning how to frame what you do in ways that people understand and want, that it's good for them. Okay, she comes to me and she says, Dad, can you buy me some donuts? You know, my reaction is like, why? So she comes to me and says, Dad, when we get donuts, it's some of the happiest times in my life. I love those memories. She's then speaking to me what I want, because I want memories. Do I care about her getting donuts? No. In fact, I'm probably like, well, it's bad for her. I don't know. But when we're having fun together, now she's selling to me, learning my techniques, unfortunately. But it's just about what do customers want. Okay, you might have a great new technology, but so what? What do they want? Customers don't care what you do. They don't care that you're a platform. They don't care that you have an API. They don't care that you're the leading blah, blah, blah. What they care is what can you do for them. Okay, you have a platform that does what for me? I don't understand. So here's 3 tips that you can use to improve your messaging right now, today. So assume someone comes to you at a party and asks you, what do you do? Pretend they asked you, how do you help customers? Or how do you help people? Because it shifts your mind towards the result that you create for people. That's one. Another approach is take whatever your elevator pitch you've written, it could work on slides or your website, and say, all right, well, we're the leading engineering platform. Okay, well, so what? Well, so we help customers code faster. Okay, so what? So we help customers code faster so they can get more releases out more quickly. Okay, okay. That's the idea. Another version of that I like is, what's so great about that? Well, we get releases out. We help customers code faster so they can get releases out more quickly. Okay, well, so what's so great about that? Well, that means that they can give more effective, ammunition to their salespeople, okay, or be more feature complete or compete more. Because ultimately, it's about who you're selling to. If you're selling a coding engineering platform to a company, and if the only person who's really the decision maker is the CEO, it's like, all right, well, how's it going to make me money or save me money? And so these are tricks that you can use to improve, again, how you describe what you do to people right now. A bit longer term, bigger picture is the idea of sell ideas, not stuff. And this is, okay, you're doing marketing, and you're trying to get people interested in your stuff. Well, when people are, it's called like early, middle, late stage buyers. In the early stage, people don't really care about your stuff. They care about new ideas. Right? So I know you've got features that are great, and I think we're used to people understand what benefits are. Okay, you have a button. The button, saves you time. Great, but it's really about for new customers. Again, this is kind of audience where you're selling to people who don't know you already. You're reaching out to new markets through outbound marketing, outbound selling. You're expanding. It's not just word of mouth anymore. And what they first care about are your ideas. Okay, how does this help me? And the main difference here is an idea is useful to your target market whether or not they buy your stuff. For example, let's say you sell a marketing thing. You might go to a marketing person and say, hey, here's, did you realize that now content marketing can be really easy to create with a button? And that might, you might give them some tips on how to do better marketing. Or maybe you teach, here's five ways to improve your marketing, which is really useful to your marketing audience. And maybe one of the tips is related to your product. But again, most companies start off, all your marketing is about how great your product is. You're the leading product of the blah, blah, blah industry, how scalable you are. It's just, people don't care. How's it going to help me? What can I learn from you? Okay, and if I'm learning something useful, that, oh, I didn't know that was possible, okay, now I'm interested in your stuff. So I think that the idea is, what kinds of ideas can you give to people, market, that will help them, even if they don't have to buy your stuff or use your stuff. And I've got a blog post that goes into detail on how you can sort of flesh this out. It's more than we can cover today here, but predictablerevenue.com/matrix goes into more of that. We have the last fatal mistake here, multitasking salespeople. And, I say, like, salespeople should not prospect. They just should not. Your closers should not be prospecting. And the expectation that you should fill or they should fill their funnels by themselves is, I think that made sense in the past when it probably started out, when you had tinkers out on the range and you didn't have phones or email, and they had to do everything themselves. But now the modern Salesforce, which we have Salesforce.com as the main, or other systems to help tie different functions together. And anyway, salespeople shouldn't prospect. And there's reasons for it. Right? Really, they're not any good at it, if we're honest. It's pretty rare to have a good salesperson who's effective at prospecting. They don't like to do it, and it's actually not repeatable either. Because even if they're any good at it, if you find the unicorn, the salesperson who can close and prospect, when they prospect, they fill their pipeline, and they get so busy working on deals they can't prospect consistently. And you get into that revenue roller coaster. And that's why, look, let's go back to the systems idea. If every single sales manager complains about their team not prospecting enough, okay, maybe it's not the people, maybe it's the system. Because getting salespeople to prospect, it's like teaching pigs to sing for these reasons. So, all right, why are we banging our heads against the wall when it doesn't even work in the first place? Again, there's an article that's great to share with sales teams and so on. It's called "Why Salespeople Shouldn't Prospect." You could Google it. It's probably the most popular article of mine. Someone else wrote it, but it's a great one. It goes into more detail here. And similar to, okay, I've got my son, Valentine. He, trying to get him to sit down at the table, it just doesn't work. So why do I keep trying to do it? It's just like banging my head against the wall. I got to find a different approach to it. And here, the solution is specialization, sales specialization. It's really about focusing your salespeople so they could be the best at what they're supposed to be doing. And there's these 4 core roles. There's starting at the top left, number 1, outbound reps who prospect, and all they do is prospect, and they're really good at it because they do it full time and they can be consistent at it. And then, bottom left, number 2, inbound reps who are responding to all. If you have inbound leads, they're the ones who are supposed to respond to them, and that way they can be really responsive within minutes or an hour. They can give those prospects, the leads, great service. And then both these roles, the outbound reps and inbound reps, are passing qualified or pre-qualified opportunities or appointments to the closers, which is number 3 in the middle. Right? Their job is to close new business. And yeah, they may prospect a little bit, like 10 or 20% of their time, but only to a handful of strategic accounts or key partners. Right? They're not cold calling down lists. It's like, we're going to hire a 6-figure person to make cold calls. And they're not going to be very good at it either. Okay. 4th role is basically post-sales roles, because there could be several: customer success, account management, support, whatever, services. But once the customer's on board, then they have a separate team or roles that takes care of them. It could be to make sure they stay, that they're happy, that they upsell or renew. And by having salespeople who could focus on doing what they do best, you get great results. And so there's typical fears around this. The most common fear, specialization, is what happens. Isn't it worse if we're passing customers off from one person to the next? And the reality is, customers get better service this way when you do it right, because when they're a lead, they get really responsive service from the junior salesperson. Okay, when they close, when they buy, okay, the salesperson's handling that. And when they're after the sale, when the salesperson wants to move on to the next deal, then the customer still gets great service from the post-sales people, professional services, support, success, whatever. And so at every stage, they're getting great support and service. Whereas when salespeople are doing everything, prospecting, closing, managing accounts, they spend time on where they make money, usually closing. And so usually what happens is a lot of their customers don't get great service from them, and a lot of the new leads don't get great service. But why specialize, in other terms? This is the core of predictability for your sales team and your sales model. Because not only by breaking out these functions, can you get much better insights into what's working. Because now, if you can tell if you're not hitting your goals, well, is it the lead generation? Is it the closing? Is it the post-sales? But you also get a lot more scalability because it's like Lego blocks. Okay, we need more pipeline, add prospectors. We need more, we have too much pipeline, add closers, and so on. And part of the best reason is now you can create a farm team system to move people up through the ranks. And this is, I mentioned, one of probably the most important thing you can do to reduce sales churn on your team. Because with a farm team system, not only do you get much better salespeople, but if you're promoting someone from prospecting to closing, you already know if they're with like a 95% chance of confidence whether they're going to succeed or not, because you know them. They already know your customer, your systems, your culture, product. So it's a much lower risk than hiring everybody from the outside. And ultimately, like, the bottom line is, if you don't specialize, you're going to struggle. You just are. So here's an example of when you're handing, there's always these baton passes. And again, they're really not that hard to do. You just tell people, hey, I'm part of a team. I handle this. My buddy John does the next step. I mean, it's expectation, simple. But with a prospector doing the red part, they might do all the list building, initial email and calling, setting appointments up, then bringing on the account executive or closer, the blue, simple handoff, and they take it. And for prospecting, it will not work consistently without dedicated prospectors. So by specializing, this kind of funnel becomes possible. You can't do it part-time very well. I mean, yeah, once in a while there's someone who could do part-time prospecting well, but again, that's the unicorn. You can't build a sustainable or predictable or scalable team around that. So just to wrap up on this point, because I do feel like this is the number, specializing your sales team, if you're not doing it yet, or taking it even further, if you started, is the number one thing you could do to make everything work better. And by doing it, you can create a farm team system, which is much lower risk and cost in your sales. When you start to grow more of your people organically, much faster ramp times, and you get better sales, service, and success all across that customer lifecycle. So I'm going to wrap it up here, and then we can do some Q&A. The quick skinny. This is about focus on your sales system or systems, not salespeople. And I don't mean your Salesforce.com system. I'm talking about your hiring system, training system, lead generation system, quota, comp, all those, your whole system. Because if you have a good system or a great system, most of your people will succeed. If you have a bad system or no system, most of your people will struggle. Because when a good person, when you have a conflict between a person and a system, usually the system wins. The second point is around, remember, the pick a narrow niche. What can you win at easily? Again, whether you're looking for a job or as a company, you're really looking for, yeah, I know everyone could use you, but where have you been the best at? Highest chance of success. There's three types of leads, seeds, nets, and spears. They're all great. They're all important, but focus on one at a time to get it up and rolling. Don't distract yourself trying to do too much at once. I mentioned this, I believe, but for prospecting especially, if you have any customers, or at least one worth at least $10,000, $10,000 or $20,000 in customer lifetime value, you want to do prospecting. You should be building a team. If you only do small customers, don't do it, or figure out how to repackage what you do or retarget what you do to be able to sell bigger deals. I have to say, small deals pay the bills, but big deals drive growth. So try it today. When people ask you, what do you do? Pretend they asked you, how do you help customers? It does take some practice, but you'll get much better answers. And the last point is, how can you further specialize or further specialize you or your salespeople? And so one other example, if you are a salesperson now and you're not getting prospecting support, your company doesn't specialize and they won't specialize, or maybe you're a solo entrepreneur, you can specialize your time. At least block out chunks of 2 hours or an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to do prospecting. Or Tuesdays could be a prospecting day or so on. So that's how you can apply that even if you can't have multiple people in different roles. So with that, I want to say thank you. We're going to have some time for Q&A. Of course, as Paul mentioned, if you want more details, there's a lot of this on the website and then a new triple book. Some of the stuff I shared is from the original, some from this upcoming one goes in more detail. And pretty easy to find. And Paul, should we do some questions, some Q&A? Or comments?
We do.
Maybe you've got some comments from
We have, no. This was fantastic. There's a fair amount of Q&A, so why don't we jump into it in the interest of time. So on that last topic about specializing core sales roles, one of the questions is, I'm concerned about the handoff of clients post-sale. I understand salespeople should not be prospecting, but as it comes past the closing, the account executive has forged personal relationships with clients throughout that close process, and then she'd be handing him off to the customer success account manager who's unknown to the client. Where does the continuity flow, and where does that consultative approach fall apart? What are the pros and cons?
Sure. So again, a lot of it's just how you do it. But let me paint the picture onto why first. So you have an account executive. And look, it's different if you're doing enterprise deals and they only have closed 2 deals a year. That might be a bit different in how you do it. But most of you probably, so your account executives might be juggling 30 or 40 deals at a time. And who knows how many customers they've closed over the past couple years. It's just impossible Of course, account executives are going to give a new deal more attention, but they just can't give those customers the same attention afterwards. So it's like, would you rather set them up for failure later because the customers come in, they got great service at the beginning, and now once they're signed on, they're not getting good service, which is very common. Or there's just too many customers for an account executive, they're spread too thin to really give them all that attention. Or when the account executive is in the deal, they say, look, I'm helping you make the right buying decision and get started and get to success. I also work with a team, there's John with my customer success team, or we make sure that once you've actually signed on and you're running, they're your point person to ensure that you get everything you need from what we do. So again, there's that kind of really simple handoff where the customer knows, I'm buying now, and then what happens, and I'm in good hands. That actually works really well. I mean, that's how Salesforce does it, and they're at $5 billion. I don't know how many, God knows how many baton passes they do per day. And it's also possible that if there's a few exceptions where maybe 5 or some small number that, okay, the salesperson, it's a special deal, it's unique, something about it where they keep it. And so again, at some point they don't pass it off to an account manager or customer success person who would be responsible for upsells and so on. Maybe they keep a small number for themselves because of the relationship, because of something else. But it is the way to go. Especially, it's the number one thing you do to make everything better is specialize your salespeople. Makes your lead generation better, makes your sales team just structurally better, your metrics better, operations better, everything better.
Got it. And then next question is, how do you incentivize top-performing sales members to transfer their success tips to lesser-performing sales team members?
It's a good question. In fact, I'm in the next book I have a case study I'm putting together from a company called Clio, where they went in 1 year. I worked with them like in 2012, and they had a very competitive team where no one shared anything with each other. And now they've got a very collaborative team. And I think what the main things they did was they didn't have territories in the old days, so you have to have territories of some kind, whether it's geographic or vertical or something. So you have to have territories. You have to, and part of it's creating a culture where you encourage people to help each other, because people do like to help each other. That's the natural state of us. We like to help. When we don't help, it's because we feel like we lose something. So if a senior person helps a junior person, are they going to feel threatened? And why would they feel threatened? So I look at what is it about the compensation, territories, incentives, or something where if people feel like they're helping others, that they're going to lose, because you don't want that.
That makes sense. The environment, the culture that's created. Another question is, how do you estimate pay grades between the 4 core sales roles? If, for example, if the highest pay is $100,000, what would the rest of them look like?
I don't have a good rule of thumb for that kind of. In general, very general terms, the inbound lead reps might have a target compensation of, 60, 50 to 80, and the prospectors are maybe 20% more than that. And the inside salespeople, there's like these rules of thumb, but I think a more important metric is the ratio of number of prospectors to closers rather than comp. Because, for example, you want usually, if you have a prospecting team, it's like 1 prospector for every 1, 2, 3 closers. Could be 4, but when you start to get 1 prospector supporting more than about 4 closers, then it breaks down because the prospector can't maintain in the relationships with all a really important part of that success is the relationship of the prospector to the closer. They know each other, they trust each other, they, so on. And if a prospector is supporting too many people, they lose that, and it starts to break down.
Next question is, does a team leveraging the outbound engine like the one you described with Acquia worry that they'll soon run out of new prospects to target? How do you make sure you don't run out of prospects, and when do you know to cast a wider net and go less niche?
Well, Salesforce.com is, again, $5 billion, and they have 100 or 200 prospectors around the world. So the mission has changed, and maybe cross-selling, and they still do lots of new business. So unless you are at IBM, I wouldn't worry about it until you get to that situation. There's more market than you realize unless you're in some crazy small niche market, which happens. What I'd say is you do it for as long as it works, and if it stops working, then you deal with that problem when you get there. In other words, I wouldn't create problems that don't exist yet. It'd be a nice problem to have, which is, hey, we've talked to every company in our target market. We have all the customers we can get. Now what do we do? That would be a nice problem to have.
That's right. The next question is, how many seeds do you think we should have before we start to do full-on marketing for enterprise clients with average annual run rate of more than $50,000 a year?
Let's see here. Well, what I found is that usually if you're a smaller startup, and again, I don't have there's a lot of these, there's so much variability, but there is a lot of templatizing with companies, and I found usually by the time you have 10 or 20 customers, you start to have enough of a pattern to be able to say, okay, here's our killer niche, and here's where we should go target, whether it's marketing or prospecting. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but you don't need to have 100 customers before you start to. It's not bad. I mean, if you have 100 customers, great, or 1,000. A lot of companies go to, Acquia went to 40 million just on inbound marketing through word of mouth and content marketing. But to go bigger companies, I think if you're small, a lot of the trick is knowing who really is your most likely, your ideal customer, your ideal target, and why would they care. So you don't have to have a lot of customers if you have a tight message and the ability to back it up. So I think I would look at I call it a use case. I'm assuming if you're a small company and you're still sort of saying how many customers do we need, but it's really about looking at the use cases and what kinds of use cases are the most common, the most powerful, and using that to be as targeted as you can about who you would market or sell to going forward. Don't be afraid to be small. Act small that way. Dream big, but act small.
All right, we have 4 more questions. We'll try to make them quick ones. Are there particular strategies when narrowing your sales force in order to not box yourself out of opportunities that fall outside your stated expertise?
Sorry, can you ask that one again?
I guess the question is, how to make sure that they're not leaving something on the table in terms of opportunities that may be outside of their niche. Making sure that they're not leaving things, making sure that they're maximizing the capability, revenue, generating capability when you're telling them to focus on a particular niche.
Yeah. Well, I think you worry about those once your business or team or yourself is growing and you've got something working and you're succeeding, then you start to look at, all right, how do I expand my niche? So, for example, I'll give you a person. There's a salesperson at a client. He's doing prospecting. And he wants to be a closer. He's ready. He wants to jump ahead, but he hasn't proven himself as a prospector yet. So it's unless you've proven yourself in your first step, first niche, why would anyone, a company or customers, let you prove yourself as a second one? I think it's that fear of missing out which hurts people, because again, I'm afraid of missing out for these opportunities. So I'm going to try to do it all at once, which then makes you confusing to others. And it's like that story. What's the story? There's the dog that had the bone, and he sees the water, and he sees another dog with another bone in the water. He tries to grab it. Tries to grab the other bone, and he loses both.
Yeah.
That's the same.
Next is, in terms of comp for lead gen reps, would you encourage a quota for both, A, the number of meetings set up, or appointments set up, I guess, to do that, and B, the number of deals to be closed by the sellers, the closers from these qualified leads?
Well, I like, so if a prospector, because inbound qualifiers can have a lot of difference, but prospectors, I like if they have a variable commission. So let's say they get paid, and a lot of it depends on where they live in the country because of living costs. Let's just say their base is $50,000 and they have a $25,000 variable. Half of that variable is tied to the number of qualified opportunities they generate per month, which might be 8. I'm just going to pick a number because it varies by, could be 10. And half of that variable is tied as a percentage of deals to close.
Makes sense.
And that percentage can vary depending on your deal sizes and so on.
The next question is about prospecting via email, and just to let the audience know, we're going to have another thought leadership series on email specifically coming up in the next month or two. When prospecting via email, what's a good way to catch a potential customer's attention?
Well, I think people open emails that are from strangers for 3 reasons, right? It's personal, curious, personal, useful, or intriguing or curious. Intriguing, curious are the same thing. So again, a subject line, people open because of subject lines and names. It could be, if it's personal, hey, I went to Stanford too. Curious could be something like last Wednesday. So you sent them an email last Wednesday they didn't respond to, send them another one. And useful could be, 3 tips to improving your sales process. I personally like the personal or curious approach. And to get them to open it and then to respond, same thing. You can combine some of those. But like, I think it's more common today where you can find something about a target online that gives you at least one point of interest that you share, or something interesting about them you can write about. One thing. And then, a reason why they should be interested in you, and then a simple call to action. Keep it short, keep it easy to read and easy to respond to.
Sounds right on point. And the last one I saved specifically, it comes from one of your fans. I love, love, love predictable revenue. Thank you. How did you choose your co-author for the book sequel? And I can't wait for installment number 2. When's it coming out?
Yeah, actually, okay, well, thank you. It's pretty cool. I'm just glad that people are getting, like the book so much and the stuff. I chose my co-author because Jason Lemkin, and if you don't follow him, I would. He's probably the only sales writer that I follow. I don't read sales books. Maybe I should, but I don't read sales books. If you ask me what my favorite other sales book is, I couldn't tell you because I don't know. I don't follow that many sales blogs. Actually, David Skock, he's more. So I just like Jason's stuff. It's very complimentary to mine. And he has also a big audience. So I just thought he'd be a great partner for it. And I like doing stuff with people. It's more fun. I think I get a better result. So that's to why would I do it with someone rather than doing it myself. I mean, I could, but I just thought it'd be a better book, which means better for you too. I want people to like my stuff. And I'm sorry, for the next installment, I'm hoping next week. I'm going to be working on it today. So it's been 1 week or 2. It partly depends on if our baby comes. If the baby comes on time or if she comes early, because my wife is due June 24th with our next baby. But she thinks the baby could come early. I don't know, it could be wishful thinking if she's done, but we'll see.
Well, for everybody on the call and everybody here at RedBooks, Aaron, thanks so much for doing this. I think it was tremendously helpful, and hope to do it again sometime soon.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone, for attending. I appreciate it, and I hope you got some useful tips out of it.
Take care, Aaron.